in terms of the Ravens defense against that Colts offense and against the quarterbacks, we did see a lot of Anthony Richardson and a lot of Daniel Jones. So we saw a good mix. And then it was said after practice by their head coach, Shane Steichen, that they will start Anthony Richardson in the preseason opener. So we don't know yet exactly how that quarterback competition is going to shake out and whether Anthony Richardson has really taken some strides. I saw a lot of the stuff that, we had seen from him in his early career where he was inaccurate at times. But there were a couple times where he was able to pick up some big gains on the Ravens defense. There was one moment in particular where A.D. Mitchell, who is a second-year wide receiver, beat Nate Wiggins down the sideline and leapt up and picked a contested ball out of the air. And I saw a lot of people characterizing that as A.D. Mitchell burned Nate Wiggins. I'm not sure it was so much a burn because there wasn't as much separation. It was a very impressive catch, but it kind of reminded me of the kind of catches we saw go against Brandon Stevens a lot last year. It was a contested ball.
Too soon.
Way too soon.
Ball.
Seeing Sanusi Kane wear number 21 is going to be probably triggering for some fans. But basically, I don't think that was one of those instances where Nate Wiggins was blanketing him in coverage, isn't able to get his hands on the ball and give credit where credit is due. A.D. Mitchell made a nice play on that. But other than that, there weren't too many times where I saw the Colts wide receivers, the Colts weapons, burning the Ravens. There were some communication breakdowns at times, but I feel very good about having watched the Ravens cornerbacks go up against the Colts wide receivers, a group that I don't think is going to be particularly strong. I don't think it's one of the best in the NFL, but against, another team's wide receivers, it's nice to see finally teams in other jerseys play each other. I thought that the Ravens defense and the cornerbacks in particular held up as well without their star safety in Kyle Hamilton, who was not practicing today.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a receiving core is only as good as the quarterback throwing to them, but the Colts have some athletic outliers. Michael Pittman's a big body guy who can box you out like a T. Higgins can. Alec Pierce, has not really realized his potential when he was a second or third round pick a couple years back. But again, another guy who can climb the ladder, go make those 50-50 balls his. A.D. Mitchell is just freakishly fast. Josh Downs is a really good route runner. So it's some of the kind of body types that I think the Ravens will probably see when they match up against a Cincinnati, when they match up against a Pittsburgh. But I don't know if it's a concern, but I think we're getting to the point now where we need to have the discussion about Nate Wiggins starting to turn around his camp and go back to the guy who was, this out and out star the first, 8 practices or so, the first week and a half, because it's been a couple of days in a row now where guys are posterizing him for big plays or for touchdown catches. And he's not a small guy. He's a slender guy. I think he's about 6 foot, 6'1". I think maybe one of the knocks against him in the pre-draft process was he doesn't have long arms, which I think maybe you can start to see on some of these go balls where you were just relying on your natural length and you don't have your eyes on the ball. So just how much of a shadow can you cast on these guys? And, for Nate, if you're not denying the throws, then you're only as good as, your kind of body size. And for whatever reason, it's just not, it's not going his way. But obviously you trust the pedigree, you trust what he showed last year, because what he showed last year was a guy who denied under 50% completion rate as a rookie in a very competitive conference. So if he's the weak link in this 5-man unit, 6-man unit, I think you'll take your chances with him. But obviously it's not just the A.D. Mitchells of the world who've been cooking him a little bit recently. It's been some guys at the back end of this Raven depth chart. And obviously we saw him take out his frustration not long after.
Yeah. So you had eyes on the skirmish that broke out during special teams drills. What did you see, and why was Nate Wiggins tossed from practice?
He was not involved in the play. He obviously came over to watch. I think he had been involved a little bit earlier. They use him as, I believe, a vice, which is the guy who matches up with the gunners in these punt return drills. So the Colts were returning punts. Everything was hunky-dory. The Ravens started returning punts. LaJohntay Wester goes back there. I think Nate Wiggins and Jalen Arbor-Davis have, the first crack at whoever is lining up against for them. Things go pretty smoothly. And then the Ravens go to the second or third rep, and stuff gets ratcheted up a little bit. And Goldwyn for the Colts, I believe was his name, gets upset with Keon Martin, who is an undrafted rookie on the Ravens, another DB. They get a little pushy, struck it a little shovey. Nate Wiggins takes exception to a late push from the Colts perpetrator in this situation. He comes off the sideline. It wasn't clear to me who struck first, the Colts aggressor or Nate Wiggins, but eventually there are several punches exchanged. There's a massive humanity that streams out into the field. I think poor Nate Wiggins ends up at the bottom of a pile, and then he gets tossed from the practice. I think John Harbaugh also said that Goldwyn, the Colts perpetrator, also was tossed for throwing punches. And as he said, that's a lesson learned, lessons you have to take with you into the regular season, because it's not really a big deal if you get tossed from a practice, but you can't be afford to getting tossed from games. There are only 17 of them in the regular season, so Nate's got to keep a cooler head and just realize that there are bigger things at play here, I guess.
What did Nnamdi BK say afterwards? That he heard that Nate Wiggins was slugging guys out there? Nnamdi did not have eyes on it, but that was just what he heard. Yeah, not exactly an exemplary moment for Nate Wiggins, but again, these practice fights happen.
Did he look like there was steam pouring out of his ears? I mean, from the earlier sessions with the Colts offense, or what?
No, but I wonder if maybe him getting beat down the sideline, maybe he saw the tweet about him getting burned. Maybe, he was a little bit frustrated with how everything had gone in that way. And you said it, he hasn't been as dominant the last week or so of camp that he was at the start of camp. So maybe there was a little bit of frustration boiling over.
Yeah.
Hot day. In terms of the run defense, the Ravens' run defense against the Colts' rushing offense, this because you have Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, a fully healthy Jonathan Taylor. Nnamdi Madubuike said after the game, or after the practice, what makes him so good is that he is a very patient runner. And I think we saw a lot of that bear out, because so many times a hole would close, Jonathan Taylor wouldn't panic, and he would dart to the right. It kind of like Le'Veon Bell's days with the Steelers, where he was waiting for the defense to make a mistake, for the defensive line to make a mistake before he takes advantage of it. And defensive line was gashed. And it wasn't just Jonathan Taylor either. So there were maybe some concerns from the Ravens rush defense, and this is an area that we're going to be watching closely after the retirement of Michael Pierce. Ravens brought back an old friend in Brent Urban, perhaps because they see this as an issue. It's something that Eric DeCosta said after the draft that maybe he wishes he had done a better job of, was addressing a run-stuffing interior defensive lineman. But this is something that we're going to be watching from week one onwards, is how good is this defense going to be against the runs? Do they have as many space eaters as they need?
I still feel better about the run defense than maybe I do even the pass defense. Again, this was
really,
I think they were like top 5 in DVOA all throughout last season in run defense. It just wasn't really a group that you had to worry about. I know obviously they did not end the season the way that we thought they would, with they got bullied and pushed around against Buffalo, and it's probably not a great sign. Here we are in early August, that the Colts, with this line that has been depleted by free agency losses and injuries, is pushing the Ravens around, or at least giving Jonathan Taylor the possibility of these rushing lanes. Any breakaway runs in training camp are kind of worrisome, because it's not like you guys, these guys are going full tilt. So that's a concern. We haven't really seen a whole lot of that, to be honest, in Ravens training camp, even with the talent in the backfield for the Ravens. And I think you just give credit to the Ravens run defense, the same run defense that apparently was gashed today. But they'll figure it out. Talking to some of the former NFLers on the sideline today, like, we don't know how worn down the Ravens are relative to the Colts because of how hard either team is practicing. Maybe that is a factor that kind of comes to the surface today. Maybe we see it that playing field level a little bit on Thursday. But I think, again, if there's anything in the NFL that you trust, it is the Ravens being able to put up a at least stout run defense. And Michael Pierce, I know we're going to talk about him a lot this year if the Ravens fall apart up front, but he didn't play that many snaps. And Travis Jones is an ascendant talent. They like John Jenkins. They like Brady. Brady's had a great camp. So I think this is there'll probably be much ado about nothing. But certainly you're not going to be able to see the full balance of this Ravens pass defense and pass rush if you can't, stay at a second and manageable.
Brent Urban being back in the fold means that we got a lot more of his midriff.
Yep.
Because he is wearing Michael Pierce's number 58, and he's leaving a lot of space from the bottom of his jersey to the top of his belt.
Not a lot of room for imagination there.
He's 34 years old. Played in 13 games last year, got 23% defensive snaps in those games and 17% of snaps on special teams, which is right around the percentages that he had with the team in 2022 and 2023. Of course, his second stint with the Ravens in his career. Do you expect Brent Urban to make this team, Jonas?
I think he's probably on the outside looking in right now. Just, the math on them having only space for probably 5 defensive linemen. I don't think it's changed all that much. Obviously, I think we'll probably get to a point where you see the name Brent Urban released and people freak out, and it's like, well, he's coming back on the practice squad. I think that's been probably the hope all along, was that, you get a guy like this in the building, you get him up to speed. We know that the Ravens have done a great job of keeping that veteran practice squad pipeline flowing pretty well. Just to have guys who are available and willing to come up and be that guy who gives you 10 to 20 snaps depending on whatever you need from them. So I think obviously he would like to be on the 53 and he may make the 53, but I think for the time being it's probably reasonable to expect that he's just going to be a practice squad guy.
All right, let's talk about the Ravens offense against the Colts defense. You had eyes on that, Jonas. What were some of your takeaways?
Just like what you saw, I think there were good parts and bad parts. Not a whole lot for the Ravens run game, but again, other than the occasional Lamar keeper, he's not really involved in the run game in this way. There's a lot of under center runs that didn't really go anywhere. There was, I think, one nice Keaton Mitchell run where he, I think, broke a tackle along the way, but not doing a whole lot there. Again, this is a very talented Colts front. Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye, all guys who could be very capable, defensive linemen in the NFL. So I think the Ravens had a nice go of it early. They were really dominant one-on-ones, which again, you don't want to read too much into because it is so heavily prejudiced for the wide receivers against the DBs. But Anthony Miller had made a great catch. Dayton Wade made a great catch. I think we only got one rep from Rashad Bateman. He made he kind of slipped, but he still was able to make a nice diving catch. We only saw one Zay Flowers route. I believe that was an incompletion. I think we only got one DeAndre Hopkins route. I believe that was a catch. So it was a lot of reps for the young guys, as you would expect. And then once we got into the team drills, I think the offensive line did a pretty good job. There were some plays that the Colts sniffed out, some screens and stuff that Lamar really had no choice but to just kind of dirt the ball. So there weren't a whole lot of explosives, except when Lamar was throwing to Charlie Kohler a couple times. You mentioned that the Ravens had their own coverage breakdowns. Sometimes the Colts forgot about the big, lanky white guy running across the middle, as Charlie Kohler would call himself. So he was, really impressive out there, not just catching the ball in space and trying to get that motor up to however high it can get revved up, but he made a catch in the red zone, in the end zone rather, for a touchdown. He made a really tough catch over the middle as the guy was kind of thwacking him in the back, managed to hold on. So, the Ravens have to feel really good about where they are, despite not having Isaiah Likely out there. And, he obviously gives you a different kind of target downfield, certainly a different kind of guy in open field. Charlie Kohler does, compared to the more shifty Isaiah Likely. But, this is a guy who lined up as basically Iowa State slot receiver when he was in college and was insanely productive that way. So it's not like he's a fish out of water. I mean, if anything, the fish out of water aspect of this is him being a guy who lines up on, with his hand in the dirt as a kind of inline tight end. So I'm sure he's relishing kind of going back to his old glory days of being the guy who was I think, all conference performer in college.
Speaking of fish, didn't he say in his podium the other day, which was a hilarious podium session, didn't he call his arm a flipper?
I think so.
When he broke his arm, he said, I had a broken flipper.
And I mean, just goes to show how deep that, and how impressive the Ravens offense was last year, that you forget that they were missing Charlie Kohler for what, a month, 6 weeks, however long it was. It was just we don't leave a remark upon it. Just the fact that this guy, who obviously you're not going to be writing breaking news headlines based on the third tight end missing time for a game or a couple games, but you just kind of blank out for certain parts of the season because the Ravens just kept coming along without much let up.
Yeah. Well, that's the offense. That's the defense. Let's talk about the special teams because the kicking competition, well, it's pretty much over. It is Tyler Loop's job. It is the rookie 6th-round pick. Unless something drastic happens during the preseason. The Ravens did release undrafted free agent rookie John Hoyland, so unfortunately, Jonas fans will not get to see his balding head, as you were smart to point out on our last podcast. That clears the way for Tyler Loop to take over as Justin Tucker's replacement. He has been money. He was money at M&T Bank Stadium in front of a bunch of fans. He was money again today. He was 6 for 6, correct?
Yeah, 6 for 6, made a 41-yarder, made a 44-yarder, and made a 55-yarder.
And on Sunday, he reached 60 yards as well, a kick that probably could have gone longer.
Yeah.
In a story on the Baltimore Sun, I believe Jordan Stout said he has the biggest leg he's ever seen. And this is a guy that held kicks for Justin Tucker. So obviously, he wasn't throwing anybody under the bus there, but it just shows how strong Tyler Loop's leg is. And
I mean, even comparing it at today's practice to the Colts kicker, who could kick that ball high, but could not kick it very far.
Yeah.
The trajectory, comparing the trajectory of the loop kicks, where it just takes off and it is climbing vertically, but also just going horizontally, compared to the Colts kicker, who he got a look at like a 50+ yarder at the end of minute drill, and it was offline to start with, but it barely, I think, would have crossed the plane. Obviously, I think most kickers can probably kick a ball 60 yards away and get it close to the uprights, if not through. But Loop just looks like he could do it with his eyes closed.
Yeah, and special teams coordinator Chris Horton said, he's not as worried about how long they can extend, how far they can extend Loop's range. They're more worried about hitting the easy ones, hitting the ones within 40 yards. So that is going to be, so far, Tyler Loop's job. Let's talk about some preseason storylines, some storylines that we could see play out over the course of their Ravens 3 preseason games, but in particular against the Indianapolis Colts. And to me, it starts with Tyler Loop having the A++++. Were there 4 pluses on John Harbaugh's?
I think the transcript was 3.
3. So A+++.
Yeah.
Practice from John Harbaugh
on Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah. So it starts with that, and this is we have seen kickers around the league lose battles, lose their jobs in the preseason. I don't think that the moment is going to be too big for Tyler Loop, but it seems like despite the fact that he seems like kind of a reserved guy, and I think that he is going to be ready for the moment, and I expect him, maybe he's not going to be perfect through the 3 preseason games, but I expect him to be ready to seize this job.
Yeah, I mean, he's only kicked here at the facility and a couple times at M&T Bank Stadium. Obviously, the Ravens only have the one home preseason game this summer. They face the Colts on Thursday, and then next week it is to Dallas, and then the week after that, you wrap things up with the game in Landover at FedEx Field. So it'll be nice for him to be able to kick in unfriendly environs, although there's probably not a whole lot of vitriol, spitting his way for a preseason game, but it's at least a taste. And, obviously it's, I know that Pac-12 football, is that where Arizona is right now? The conference realignment, he's kicked in some hostile environments. So it'll be good for him to get a look at other stadiums, new sight lines. But yeah, I mean, I think barring him, I don't know, kicking us under 60% in the preseason, it's hard for me to see any reason for the Ravens to kind of upset the apple cart here and go in a different direction for week 1.
And obviously Tyler Loop will be kicking for the Ravens, but in terms of the normal starters on this team, John Harbaugh has already said that they are treating preseason game 1. He didn't say all 3 preseason games, but preseason game 1 the way that they treated all 3 preseason games last year. So we are not going to see the vast majority of starters. And Jonas, you went back and looked at the number of guys who did not play at all in the preseason.
Eddie Jackson.
That list.
Eddie Jackson didn't play in the preseason because they were so sure in Eddie Jackson.
They needed to save his legs for the regular season.
Yeah.
And it worked like a charm. Who else didn't play in the group of starters last year? Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. I mean, pretty much every weapon on offense, most of the starters on defense. We're not going to see, if the Ravens stick to the plan that they had last year, we're not going to see any of these guys.
Yeah, and even, like the one nice thing about the preseason last year was that we did get a good look at some of the challengers who ultimately were named starters along that offensive line. But now that Daniel Faalele is established, now that Roger Rosengarten is established, maybe you add those two guys to the pile of Ronnie Stanley, Tyler Linderbaum. It's possible that like 4, maybe all 5 starters, all projected week 1 starters, all that starting 5, none of them play in the preseason, which would be a shame because I think, if the Ravens want to give Tyler Luth the opportunity to make some kicks, then they're going to need a functional offensive line, and there are some guys up front who could really struggle with this. If the Colts are bold about throwing out some of their best guys out there, and they're going against Carson Benson, who is a bit of a project still at this point, and I think will be a project for the foreseeable future. I believe he gave up a strip sack on the last 2-minute drill that the Ravens were going with. Then you're going to probably need a lot of quick game, a lot of screens to kind of get around him. But obviously, the Ravens will find a way to make do, and we'll see just what happens. But you're right. I mean, it's going to be a lot of new faces, and that's what's going to be exciting. I think you probably will get a lot of looks at a guy like Mike Green, as a guy like I don't know. I'm just trying to think of the other rookies who might. Teddy Buchanan.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see Malachi Starks out there because we didn't see Nate Wiggins last year. That he was already basically locked into that starting position. So it's a shame that you don't even get the chance to see the rookies lined up. But frankly, the Ravens are dealing with injury problems there too.
Yeah. So do you think that Malachi Starks is the only rookie that will really get a pass here?
Who's in line to play? Yeah. I mean, like obviously Emory Jones is still banged up. Robert Longerbeam is still sidelined. So there are a lot of guys who you would like to get the chance to see play. I mean, like, will Bill Alcone suit up out there considering what he's doing with the shoulder injury? You hope so. Obviously, these guys are getting a day off tomorrow. So we'll see. But it's going to be, obviously the Ravens take pride in their undrafted rookie class, and it's going to fall on guys like Ruben Lowry, Xavier Guillory, Jamal Banks to fill the voids and, be the guys who are getting those reps in the 3rd, 4th quarter.
We saw Trenton Simpson play a lot last preseason as the Ravens were attempting to hand him the starting linebacker job that was left vacated by Patrick Queen. He won that job, did not keep it the entire season. How much do you expect somebody like Trenton Simpson to play in preseason week 1?
I think a decent amount. Obviously, he's not going to be out there with Roquan. But I mean, I think they feel better about where he is this year compared to last year. I know some fans were freaking out about him giving up that completion to Derrick Henry on the wheel route in the stadium scrimmage, but that wasn't really his fault. I mean, that was just a well-designed play, well-executed play. I think the Ravens have been flagged for offensive pass interference for less than that. And I think he's done a pretty good job. I mean, I don't know if he caught your eye one way or another in coverage today, but I think the Ravens have to feel better about where he is. And, you can only play Teddy Buchanan and Jake Hummel and the guy, the Chandler Martin, the guys who are at the back end of that depth chart, so many snaps.
So there was a moment in the practices today where Trenton Simpson did not look great. He kind of was caught with his eyes in the backfield and what could have been a read option play, but essentially a screen out of the backfield, and was totally lost. And that's the kind of play where I feel like he needs to have shown he can take strides.
Right.
And I think that this is an area where the Ravens did not meaningfully add a ton of competition to that other linebacker spot next to Roquan Smith. So whether Trenton Simpson takes those massive steps or not, they lost Chris Board, they lost Malik Harrison, and they replaced them with a rookie in Teddy Buchanan and a special teams ace in Jake Hummel. Jake Hummel has not particularly shined, I don't think, during training camp. Teddy Buchanan is fast, but the linebacker position is a difficult one to take over as a rookie. We've seen a lot of rookies take their lumps. Patrick Queen was a guy who went off to a slow start, and he was a first-round linebacker. So to me, that job is Trenton Simpson's by nature of the fact that there's nobody else there that I think deserves that job.
Yeah, that's fair.
And hopefully he's better than he was last year.
You know, him getting first team reps, we think, on Thursday against a very athletic quarterback in Anthony Richardson, I think will be a good test for him. You know, you have that constant run pass conflict if you're in RPOs or if you're in read options, and just there's the, you know, what better test, what better warm up for week one, and the sometimes impossible task of bringing down Josh Allen than bringing down a guy who's as big, as strong as Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson might even I think probably does weigh more than Josh Allen, just because he is just so ridiculously jacked. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how those guys handle, you know, life as the first stringer. Maybe even they'll have Trenton Simpson wearing the green dot if that's something that they feel comfortable with him on those first couple series. But obviously it's going to be, considering how few uncertainties there are regarding this Ravens team and this Ravens defense in particular, I think there's probably an undue amount of pressure on Trenton Simpson right now.
Trenton Simpson did wear the green dot when Roquan went down last year, correct? I'm trying to remember.
I think I'm not sure.
Roquan missed
he missed the back end of that Steelers game, right?
Yes. I think that might have happened, but I'd have to go back and look. What else are you looking for? What else are you looking for in preseason week one? Are there any storylines in particular, Jonas, that you have your eye on?
I think we're pretty invested in the pass rush, just derby at this point. You know, I think there will be a lot of intrigue on Mike Green's performance. You see, even from that scrimmage Saturday, you know, the clips going viral of him turning that corner, you know, blowing by guards with the pass rush games that the Ravens are running. And if the Colts are investing, you know, if the Colts are moving to put Anthony Richardson as their starting quarterback in this preseason game, then you assume that they will also throw at least a couple potential first string starters out there to protect him along that offensive line. And that means that, you know, assuming Kyle Van Noy, Odafe Owe, Tavius Robinson, all these guys, none of whom I think played in the preseason last year, then, you know, the bulk of the reps will fall to guys like David Ojabo, Adisa Isaac, and yes, Mike Green. And Mike Green's beaten up on the minnows of this Ravens offensive line, but he hasn't really gotten a whole lot of great looks at what I would call, you know, NFL quality offensive linemen. So if he can get into the backfield, if he can create pressures, if he can stand up against the run, then that's going to, you know, lead to an even louder chorus of get Mike Green onto the field at all costs.
How far above right now, if at all, do you see Mike Green in his development as opposed to Adisa Isaac, last year's third-round pick?
As far as development, like how close he is to getting to the field, or,
sure.
or what?
Yeah. How
I mean, I think Mike Green's done better than him in pretty much all facets. I think Adisa's done a better job, and I think in recent weeks against the run. Again, it's really tough for us to decide what makes a great play as a run defender. Like, are you getting into the backfield because you were left, or because you shed a block? And, you know, did the receiver or the running back follow his job? So obviously he was the biggest stock faller in our anonymous media survey that came out today. Wasn't really all that close. You know, you wonder just how much he needs, or, you know, what a poor performance from him in the preseason would look like for the chances of David Ojabo potentially getting back onto the right side of the bubble here. But I think it's pretty clearly, you know, you have the top three pretty well established in KVN, Odafe Owe, Tavius Robinson. And then I think, you know, Mike Green is probably closer to that group than he is to the back group.
Let's talk about special teams as well. We got to look at a lot of special teams today, particular kick return. How do you see that battle shaking out? And what have you learned from special teams coordinator Chris Horton, John Harbaugh, who has his background in special teams, about what the Ravens are looking for when it comes to a kick returner and punt returner?
Yeah, it's boring, but it's all ball security, right?
Yes,
it's all ball security. And it was interesting. I think I believe LeJontay Wester, you know, rookie 6th-round pick, did an interview with I think Alex Glaze of the, you know, local Baltimore media corps, and he told him that basically when he's talked with Harbaugh's message to him was that your mission number one is special teams. So even though LeJohntay hasn't done a whole lot yet as a receiver. He obviously had a touchdown in the back of the end zone in that scrimmage on Sunday. His job is just to potentially make an impact as a returner, and that starts with just being careful with the ball. So, I don't know if we'll see any kind of wacky punts, putting weird spins on it from the punter on Thursday's game. But if the Ravens defense is as good and deep as we think it is, then the Ravens should be probably forcing a couple punts and giving themselves an opportunity to evaluate all those guys there, whether it's Dayton Wade, Anthony Miller, LeJohntay Western, maybe Talon Wallace get some love there. Obviously, had a brief spell as a punt returner last year before fumbling that opportunity away. So the Ravens are looking for an impact returner, but before you can get an impact returner, you just need to get a guy you have confidence in being able to do his job at a basic level.
Just catch the ball. That's what John Harbaugh was saying. Just square your shoulders. He was offering a demonstration of how to bring the ball in. He said it's something he learned from Andy Reid and Ray Rhodes back in the day. So that's what he's looking for first and foremost. Once you clear that basic hurdle, then it's, all your athleticism will kind of show itself. And I am curious because, this is a spot that the Ravens wanted to upgrade, and we'll see if they truly have upgraded with the talent that they have here. All right, Jonas, we will be back after the game on Thursday at some point, some from somewhere. We don't yet know. But in the meantime, you've got plenty of coverage on the BaltimoreBanner.com where people can subscribe $1 for 6 months. Gianna Hahn has some great coverage there as well. And so does Kyle Goon. And should be fun. I'm excited. Football is back. It is here. We're going to see actual football in front of us.
Cooper Rush, Devin Leary, catch the fever.
So my question is, if Cooper Rush does a tush push, do we call it a rush push?
Nope. Next question.
All right. I tried with that one. Really thought I had something there. But can we workshop it?
What would you call a question about the Ravens third string quarterback?
I don't know.
A Leary query.
There it is. That's a much better one. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Jonas Shaffer, I'm Paul Mancano. Write us a 5-star review. I'll read it after you're on the show. Like, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll catch